Now, you mentioned a lot of the motives for them coming here is looking for land and looking for freedom and all these different things, and that kind of kickstarted this this genocide, this colonization that we're talking about. As time goes on, and they started to see a little bit more success, do you think that that motives may have changed? Do you think that there started to become maybe an inherent dislike toward the people, and it started to go a little in a different direction?
Sure. I mean, yeah, the simple answer is yes. I mean, but there are all kinds of ways that that plays out depending on, again, where and when you're talking about. You know, so the movement, like, again, in the in the U.S. context, right, to natives as this kind of racialized other, in the sense of being these kind of dangerous savages, you know, that they're racialized as that. I mean, you know, dependent on how you market, I mean, that begins, you see variants of that from the start. There's times in history when it becomes, you know, more front and center. It becomes re-articulated in stronger ways. So after Metacom's War, you know, for example, the 1670s, you see this kind of explosion of painting natives as these untrustworthy, you know, kind of, you know, bloodthirsty people that are going to, you know, be violent no matter what. I mean, there's this kind of casting the war in the aftermath of the war in this way, in the writings that you see in the late 17th century, particularly, you know, in New England. So that happens. There's ways of kind of, you know, painting during westward expansion, for example, painting native peoples as you know, nomadic in ways that are meant to undercut the idea that they can become incorporated into the United States, right? So there's things like prior to the large removal movements in the 1830s and 40s, whether this be, you know, in the South with the Cherokees and Choctaws and others, or in the North with, you know, the Hautestonis or whoever it happens to be, there is this notion that Native peoples are still, you know, hunters, right? Still not civilized, right? Even though, of course, they have, you know, they have farms, they have churches, they have schools, right? All of that is kind of just brushed aside in the name of creating this kind of racialized other. So, yeah, so you do get points in history where there are purposeful attempts to, again, you know, paint a picture of Native peoples as a particular, you know, with a particular brush in ways that make colonization easier. Where I live in Connecticut, for example, you see, you see things like calling into question Native people's indigenous identities in the late 17th century as a way to dispossess them, saying, well, you can't have this reserved land because, you know, you're not really Native, you know, that kind of thing. So again, it just depends, you know. I would say today, in our present moment, there's still a lot of, and this is a holdover from the latter part of the 20th century, there's still a lot of the idea that you know, Indians are not real Indians anymore, like I was talking about before. You know, if they hunt from motorized boats, for example, you hear, you know, bizarre things like this. They hunt from motorized boats. Well, that's not really, you know, that you can't really, or fish, you know, from motorized boats. You can't really be a real Indian, right? So there's this weird kind of historical, historicized, I guess, picture of natives as, again, being locked in what one historian has called colonial time, you know, the past, where the only real Indians reside, you know, and that's just a more sophisticated way of again, controlling, subordinating, containing Native people. in ways that justify ongoing colonization.